Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are listening to the Reserves podcast. Welcome back. Thank you for listening. Not only are we back on this fantastic Tuesday, but basketball is back. It's been back since Saturday. We talked a little bit about the Bucks gentleman sweep, Lakers finishing off the Blazers, and honestly how the Clippers just simply survived Luka's NBA superstar arrival. We talk a lot about the Nuggets versus Jazz. At this point, it's Game 7. Curious to see who comes out of there. But we talk a lot about our thoughts on that matchup in general. We talk a little bit about the Rockets versus the Thunder. Now, I'm recording this as of September 1st, the morning the podcast premieres. At this point, we now know that the Rockets versus Thunder is going into Game 7. That is not the notion that we had in this podcast whatsoever. So it's going to be a little interesting to see us have to backtrack on Friday's episode when we talk about who won Game 7, which is going on tonight. Talk a lot about Kawhi, and then, of course, we finish off the podcast with some hot takes. Don't want to miss it. We're starting to hit our stride of this podcast a little bit, so we hope you guys stick around. Follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you haven't already, check out our Anchor webpage. You can donate there if you'd like. Absolutely no need to, though. And that's all I got for you guys. All right, so enjoy the podcast. Talk to you later. All righty, man. Well, we did not take a hiatus, but the NBA, basketball, along with a few other professional sports you guys heard in our last episode, did take a little bit of a hiatus away from their games. But basketball's back. Kind of jumping right into it. What are your thoughts on a few of the series that are already over? Teams like the Blazers being kicked out by the Lakers, maybe on just unfortunate seeding that they didn't have a little bit of a better chance. But kind of quickly summarizing a few of the series that ended, what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah. Hiatus, a couple of days felt like a lifetime, I feel. It was 3 days? 3 days without games or something?
Well, we've been getting 3 or 4 NBA games a day for what?
You just take it away cold turkey. But yeah, I mean, since the hiatus is over, we had the Bucks finish the gentleman sweep on the Magic, so they're donezo. The Magic are in an interesting spot moving forward. They have some cap tied in with Vucevic and Aaron Gordon, so I'm interested to see where they go on. Lakers finish off the Blazers, LeBron and AD, proving that they are the duo. Clippers survive. Luka, we had Marcus Morris attempt murder on the court, but other than that, that was crazy. I don't mean to stop right there, but what did you think of that foul? Did you see the foul?
I did see the foul. I didn't see it live. I saw it after. I'm having a bad habit these playoffs of not watching games live. But the problem is that he's developed a history already of doing this to Luka, and he wasn't wrong in saying, Luka's the face of the NBA. They have to take care of him. But I mean, I feel like a small storyline that's happening here is similar to Draymond in 2018, 2017. Now he has enough technicals. By the time you get to the finals, just in the playoffs, I don't know. We could see Marcus Morris. We're not quite there yet, but in the world where the Clippers end up in the finals, is Marcus Morris going to land himself in a Draymond situation where he's out in Game 6 because of too many technicals? I don't know, but
yeah, dude, he threw a haymaker. I was like, whoa. But yeah, I mean, there's not much to say there. Porzingis was out with a meniscus tear, so it's tears in both knees now when it comes to knee injuries, which is obviously huge for a guy that's 7'3".
Yep.
But yeah, Clippers move on. We have Rockets and Thunder. Continues to be a great series. Rockets are living and dying by the 3 whenever they don't hit. Looks like the Clippers win, or the Thunder. All right, it's a rough day. Looks like the Thunder win, but I mean, when they're hitting, and every game that they're hitting makes me think that the Rockets might have a chance. I don't know, if they could go against the Lakers and hit the amount of threes that they can hit, I don't know. I don't know if he could stop it.
Yeah, I mean, the unfortunate part is that I feel like, for both of these teams, and then maybe that's why it's such a great series, is that for both of these teams, kind of everything that, their team is set up to do has to go right in order for things to work out. Like, yeah, the Rockets have James Harden, but I'm an advocate that, his style does not directly, contribute to winning all the time. But like neither the Rockets or the Thunder really have like a LeBron or a Luka or a Kawhi who can just like absolutely take over a game that leads to winning. Like how many times did we see it over the course of the year where James Harden has this ridiculous stat line and then the Rockets lose by 10. So I think that's why this series is as great as it has been, is that we're not seeing that like takeover factor, from like a Luka having a triple double that leads the Mavericks to a victory, or like LeBron having a ridiculous like 32, 15, and 17 game like he did, leading the Lakers to victory. So I don't know, but I mean that's me being a little bit of a James Harden pessimist. I'm not as big of a fan as everyone else is on him. So
Yeah. I mean, they've been hitting their threes though. Like Eric Gordon, Ben McLemore, Daniel House, even like PJ Tucker. Like all of the role players that like need to be hitting their shots have been hitting their shots.
yeah,
And it's just one of those scenarios where like they rely on like every role player getting like at least like 8 to 10 points, and if they don't, like it's an L for them.
yeah,
But I mean, like I said, they're proving that like if they are like running on all cylinders and they're hitting their threes, like you know, I don't know if there's like another team out there that can go out there and hit 33s in a game like consistently.
yeah. I
um,
mean, honest question: do you really think that they can do that for a 7 game series? Like they have a benefit of right now of the Thunder just simply not being as good of like as maybe as talented of a team, in terms of like across the board starting five. So I don't know. I don't want to get too much into it, because I think it's going to be a more interesting conversation if it goes to Game 7, and then we're going to sit here and dedicate too much
yeah.
time, and then the Thunder are going to get knocked out tonight. So
Well, I only brought up the Lakers because they've
yeah,
proven to be a bad perimeter defensive team. So it's like scary to think that like one through quote unquote five, if you want to call Tucker or whoever it may be a five, like they're all out there ready to shoot a three, and it's like you're facing like the team that has like terrible perimeter defense. Like that's like the worst you could ask for as like
yeah,
a Lakers fan. But we'll see what happens. The Rockets have to get past the Thunder, and then it's on to that series. I'm definitely looking forward to that one.
yeah,
But to get into, in my opinion, the best series so far, the Nuggets and the Jazz. That has been nuts. Like 50-point games, 40-point games from Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell. Like they're showing their emergence. Like, they Donovan Mitchell was always seen as like as a scorer, but like what else could he bring to the table? And he wasn't efficient. And Jamal Murray could get you 20 points one game and the next game 8. And they're out there.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I feel like this happens every year where we have this like first round series, and I don't want to discount what we're seeing in terms of like production from these guys. I mean, like Jamal Murray having a 50-point game, a 42-point game, and then a 50-point game, all back to back to back, is absolutely ridiculous. There was a stat I saw that like he tied like Michael Jordan in terms of like this sort of games all back to back, like having 3 games in a row over 40 points, 2 of them being 50-point games. I'm pretty sure it was like just him and Michael Jordan for like a single series. And like thinking back to all these LeBron series that have happened, like that's a pretty ridiculous stat, to be putting up. I mean, just the sheer production, like 142 points in 3 game span for one person is absolutely ridiculous. But it's just I don't know. It's kind of it's like I said, it's one of those first round series where it's like, yeah, this is super exciting, but also can we kind of get it over with because neither of these guys are making it to the championship.
Yeah, but it's always good to see these type of players like come into their own. Like it reminds me of like I think it was 2013 or 2014 when Paul George really had his emergence on the Pacers against a Heat team, where
Yep.
it's like you just see this type of like young talent like starting to take over, and you're like, oh man, like he's next. Like these players they're young, they're talented, like sky's the limit, and they're next. Like I saw a similar stat line where it was Jamal Murray put up that 50-point game, but it was like 70% shooting from the field or something, or maybe it was like 65. But still, like on that volume is nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I mean, I feel like we do see a little bit of an increase in most of these, premier players in terms of their production and their efficiency. But I mean, to have both of these guys doing it, I mean, just focusing on Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray, because those two are really the ones that have been, trading blows throughout the entire series. Like Jamal Murray's going off for averaging 34 points, 6.5 assists, 6 rebounds, and 57% from three. And then Donovan Mitchell is putting up like James Harden style scoring numbers as well, like 38.7 points a game. Not as productive, on the rebounds and assists, but 61% from three. And I mean, like for me, for an average fan, like that, he's not even a 3-point scorer that I would think of. Like you give me, you say you can have any 10 guys to put up, the best 3-point shots in the game. Donovan Mitchell is probably not cracking my top 10, let alone maybe top 15 or top 20 in the league. So I mean, did you see this from him at all? Like, did you see this being a possibility in terms of what he would be able to produce in a series?
Um, no, not really. That's why I was kind of touching on that. Like, it felt like an emergence like series
Mhm.
from these players, like eye opening for like the rest of the league. Like they've had months and months off. Like if you're dedicated enough and you spent those like what was it, 3 or 4 months or whatever it is, just like in the gym, like shooting, like
Yep.
I mean anything's possible. Like it's just you in the gym. Like if you were dedicated to getting better during that quarantine, like you had the ability to, perfect whatever it is you wanted to perfect. And I feel like players like Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell really showed their dedication to the game.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I feel like people have a wrong, idea about what the offseason looks like for most of these players. It's like, not very many players walk off after being eliminated or, walk off, especially not after winning a championship, and are like in the gym, the next day or within the next few days. Like these guys require, I mean, I would say north of 80% of these top tier players that are in the playoffs are dealing with like nagging injuries that, like, if they didn't have to play, they'd probably be taken care of in terms of like nursing the injury or getting something fixed in a small surgery. And so it's like this 2 month break that was like right in the peak of, a lot of these guys hitting their stride probably did wonders for players like Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell, where they were forced almost to like, we're not going to take any sort of team practice. You don't have to worry about schemes and remembering plays and, making sure you feed the right players on your team the ball. It's like, no, you just get to sit at home in your home gym. And if you want to put up 1,000 shots a day, a week, whatever you want to do, it's like, I mean, that's definitely been something exciting to kind of watch, is to see which players, oh, okay, you took advantage of your time, before the bubble, or right, maybe you didn't take so much advantage of your time before the bubble. And that's, I mean, you're definitely right. That's been an interesting little sneak peek into what these guys are committed to doing.
Yeah, and I know for like even myself, like if I go a couple months without playing basketball and I go out there and put up some shots, like I'm not gonna miss. But if, or sorry, I I am gonna miss. But if I, a little too cocky. If I go out there like consistently, like you and I are playing, we're running fives or threes, and like I'm getting my reps up and my shots up, like my percentage obviously increases. And I feel like that's what players like Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray were doing. Um, but then there is players like Michael Porter Jr. in that series where, removed from the starting lineup, maybe not getting as many minutes per game, but it's still showing up on the plus minus if you're one of those types of people. But like you could show your value to the team without necessarily putting in like points per game, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I think you finished yesterday's game, it was like a plus 18 or plus 20 or something, but like terrible shooting night. But still, like you need people like that on the team.
Yep. And I mean, now, I feel like the bubble games that Michael Porter Jr. had were way more impactful for the next few years of his career than they are for this, first round series, or, if the Nuggets do, advance the rest of the playoffs. Like the Nuggets, I don't think, Mike Malone is anticipating Michael Porter Jr. having one of those games, whereas maybe he'll rely on, Jamal Murray and Jokic, of course, and maybe even a Gary Harris to have those sort of games. Like, there's no expectation for Michael Porter Jr. to go out there and put up his bubble numbers every single night. But it is kind of nice, now knowing, Mike Malone has it in his back pocket of like, okay, this is the sort of player that we can expect in the future. And, like you're the one that pointed it out to me. The plus minus is like something that can't really be taught. Like a lot of guys that like don't put up the stats but have positive plus minus, like they're doing a lot of the things that you can't really coach that much. A lot of instinct, like a lot of things that just can't be coached, and effort, is what you see in the plus minus. So that's definitely great to see.
Yeah, and then having I feel like seeing those bubble games from Michael Porter Jr. was like a secret weapon almost. Like
Hmm.
you know that he's capable of that, and like you don't know when he's gonna come out and hit 8 threes for you. Like, but you know that he's capable. So it's like maybe there's a game where Jamal Murray, let it be Game 7, I don't know, but Jamal Murray like for some reason isn't hitting from the floor, but then like Michael Porter comes out and gives you 26. Like it's big to have those types of players.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like at this point, in the season, and especially like once you get deep into the playoffs, like there's so much footage of like what your season already looked like. And I mean, like if you're the right team and you knew that you were going to be advancing to the playoffs, you probably watched a lot of film. And a Michael Porter Jr. is just something that's simply like there's not a lot of film out there. Like you said, you don't know what you're going to get game to game, and so it's like it's also one of those things, where he hasn't been in a starting lineup yet, but I could easily see the Nuggets advancing and putting him into the starting lineup when you play against someone like the Clippers, and kind of forcing Doc Rivers, Kawhi and Paul George to consider like, okay, like, yeah, he didn't have, statistically a great first round, but you also kind of can't like sag off of him the entire game because he could very easily be the top scorer, at any given game. So it'll be interesting to see what Mike Malone, and the Nuggets do if they advance the next round against the Clippers. With someone like, with people like Jokic and Murray, who could easily go off for 30 points any given game. Someone like Gary Harris, who could easily, sneak in, a series where he's averaging 20 points a game. And then having someone like Michael Porter Jr., who just simply adds that fourth, raw scorer where, the Clippers, defensively really just have like three premier, perimeter defenders. And then you start having to pick and choose, okay, who are we going to kind of allow to score? So it could definitely be interesting moving into the next round if they do. So
Yeah,
kind of,
and I mean you mentioned Gary Harris, and that's a name that we haven't really seen yet because of the hip problems that he was having. But he
yep,
just came back yesterday, was on a minutes restriction. But I mean, if he comes back full force and you can see him slip into that starting lineup instead of Monte Morris, you have like Gary Harris coming in at the 2 spot. Like he's had some issues the last couple of years, but you know that he can give you 15 to 20 points a game. Like he's capable of it. And then you
yeah,
have someone like Monte Morris shifting to the bench who can give you 10 off the bench. Like that helps their depth out a lot.
yep. I feel like the best Gary Harris comparison that I can make in terms of production, and especially, like for us Kings fans, is like a Bogdan Bogdanovic. Like he'll have, in a span of, let's just say, 25 games, he'll actually have 5 games where like by the second quarter you realize it's his game and you're just giving it to him, and he's got like 25 to 30 toward by the end of the game. But then it's also he's like just quietly averaging 18 points. Like he hits maybe a couple big shots here and there, but he's just that guy that like and when I say averaging 18 points, that means like his lowest scoring game is maybe 14 and his highest scoring game is maybe 22, in the span of
Yeah.
an 18 game average. So I don't know. It'll definitely be interesting. It'll be nice. Hopefully the minutes restriction is lifted for Game 7, just in terms of the sheer gravity of the situation. But it'll be nice to see both sides, at closest to capacity as possible. So, and when I say that, we know the Jazz situation in terms of Bogdanovich, and Colin. You kind of mentioned prior to us recording that maybe if the Jazz had Bogdanovic, we wouldn't even be at Game 7. That maybe this would have just been a 5 game series. Do you want to expand on that at all? Do you really see that as a possibility if Bogdanovic was around, or that it just might have shaken things up and maybe we wouldn't be where we are?
Having a player like Bogdanovic on your team like gives you the third player, like the third person on your team that gives you 20 points.
Yep.
Some games that might be closer to like 14, but he has the ability to go out and hit like 5 or 6 threes for you. And then you put that next to an Ingles, Mike Conley, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert. Like that is their complete starting lineup. And if they have that, like I think the series would have been over probably in 6 games. I think they would have won yesterday, but Yeah, I mean, anytime you're missing a 20-point per game score from your lineup, like it changes everything.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't disagree with that. I mean, I think it's just one of those things where you never really know. Like with Bogdanovic there, does that take away from Donovan Mitchell's production in terms of what he's been able to produce? Does that maybe change things as far as what the Nuggets have been able to do, offensively, defensively? So all kinds of things, but absolutely, Bogdanovic is not a person, that is there and then won't necessarily contribute to winning. So definitely a curious what if, and maybe next year, crossing our fingers that everything's back to normal, in terms of playing. Hopefully next year, first round matchup, we get a little bit of a rematch with both teams at full capacity, and maybe we even see Mike Porter Jr. Advancing a little bit further in his career. But kind of wrapping things up here, game sevens are always exciting, but regardless of which team advances, we know that they're going to be playing the Clippers, not number one. So Colin, not necessarily a hot take. We're not quite there yet, but what are the chances of either of these teams really advancing past the Clippers, and potentially playing in the conference finals?
I feel like pretty slim.
Mm-hmm.
Even if Paul George doesn't show up, I can't really see either of these teams being able to move past the Clippers. The reason why the Mavericks were able to do what they did to them was specifically because of Luka. He doesn't just affect your scoring; he affects your entire game.
Yeah.
But I could see maybe one of these teams pushing it to 6 games, but at the end of the day, like I don't even think it'll be a 7-game series.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, I think that Luka, is, I think outside of LeBron, Luka is going to be the most dynamic player that the Clippers face in the entire Western Conference. But it'll be interesting to see, what they do against a much more well-rounded team, which I think both the Jazz and the Nuggets are, more so than the Mavericks. I think the Mavericks had, Luka, which absolutely changes everything. It is not a stretch to say that Luka is the Western Conference LeBron in terms of how, LeBron was coming up and really leading a team, that maybe didn't really have have good reason to be, taking the Clippers almost to a game 7. So it'll be interesting to see, regardless. But, we have another series in the West that's, pending a potential game 7. And the winner of this series will be playing the Lakers. And that's the Rockets versus the Thunder. So game 6 tonight. We are recording this August 31st. So game 6 tonight. Westbrook is officially back. With the OKC just not really having not really being able to compete in terms of firepower that the Houston Rockets have, and Westbrook coming back, does this really spell the end for OKC? And this, great, regardless of what happens, this great run that they've had through this first round series and through the entire season. But does Westbrook coming back really spell the end for them?
I think it does. When I initially picked them to win, I thought they were going to be able to steal at least 2 of the first 2 games, or first 3 games, I mean. But the fact that they weren't able to go out there and get a couple of those wins early on, Westbrook just coming back, that additional 20 and 10 guy, like at the end of the day, it does fall back on the Rockets being able to hit their threes. But I just really think that the Rockets will win this one. I'm kind of hoping for them to win because I really, really want to see a Rockets-Lakers matchup. I'd be interested to see how the two of James Harden and Westbrook would take on Anthony Davis and LeBron James. It'd be a fun series.
Yeah, who on the Rockets would guard Anthony Davis? Seriously, PJ Tucker?
Probably Robert Covington. Robert Covington has a long wingspan. I think it's like 6'11" or something. Not saying it would be super effective, but
yeah, I mean, I just for 38 minutes a game, I just feel like you need a premier big man defender for
define guard. He would be on Davis. I'm not sure how effective he would be.
Fair. But I mean, not too much time on the Rockets versus Thunder. I think both Colin and I are in the same boat of just the Rockets are going to get past this one. Even if it goes to game 7, I just don't foresee Harden, allowing his team to be beaten by a team like the Thunder. The Thunder have done great with what they have, and I think that they surprised everyone. but I just don't see them getting past the Rockets. So I think we're looking at, I don't think either of us can really call what's going to happen with the Nuggets and Jazz, but I think we're looking at Lakers and Houston, just like Colin wants. But regardless of who the Clippers play, Kawhi has quietly been having a pretty ridiculous postseason. I mean, he had a quietly having a ridiculous postseason, even after a pretty quiet bubble performance. I mean, he really has not. There's not been a drop off, regardless of what Paul George has not been able to do for him. He's been averaging 33 points a game with 10 rebounds, 5 assists, and regardless if you think that number is low, Kawhi has never been a ridiculous triple-double threat. That's where LeBron and Kawhi are separated. Is that Kawhi's impact on the game is not in terms of stats. He's averaging 2.5 steals a game just in this first round series. So in the playoffs, all while averaging 39 minutes per game. So Colin, I said it before we started recording. I don't want to use the I word. Knock on wood that we continue to see kind of really this limited amount of players being hurt. But do you think that Kawhi can kind of keep up, not only the stats, but this minutes per game average as, especially once the Clippers reach the Lakers in the conference finals, if we think that's when it's going to happen, he's only going to have to produce more and more as the competition gets more fierce. Do you think that he can keep this up?
Yeah, Kawhi always turns on when the postseason comes. He's that guy that can get you 30 and 10 every game, and like you said, he's not much of a playmaker, so the assist really isn't that eye popping to me. But the minutes per game thing is a little scary, just because I'll go ahead and say the I word, just because of the injury stuff for him. It's never really been like clear exactly what was going on with him. Some people said it was like a degenerative thing in his leg. I'm not sure what it is, but 39 minutes in a series is a lot for someone that usually sits out, back-to-backs. So I'm interested to see how the next series goes, and hopefully the Clippers can just get it done in like 5 or 6 and get Kawhi some rest. Dude, that's a beeping thing.
Yeah,
it's like it's like eating away at like me trying to think. I've just been hearing it so long today that like every time it goes off, I like flinch.
Yeah.
Not ideal. I basically left off on saying like, hopefully the Clippers can get this series done short and get Kawhi like a little bit of extra rest. Like hopefully they can go out there and put some points on the board to where they can get that second unit more minutes and get him a little less playing time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, God damn it, Stella. Yeah, I mean, I think, of course, it sucks to assume, things. I mean, really anything can happen, especially in the West. I think a lot of these teams are so well-rounded, and especially specifically talking about the Nuggets and Jazz. Anything can happen in a series with the Clippers against either the Nuggets or the Jazz, right? Like we saw the Clippers give up, nearly get taken to a game 6, game 7, against the Mavericks. And like I said before, I think the Nuggets and the Jazz are both a little bit more well-rounded than the Mavericks. So anything can happen. I don't foresee Kawhi getting a lot of, quote unquote rest time in this second round. I also kind of think that they want a sweep. I think that they want to get this over with as fast as possible, and really just see what happens, between the Lakers and the Rockets. I don't foresee them, trying to prolong it any longer than they have to. Now, if there's 5-10 minutes left in the fourth quarter and they're up by 15 or 20, do I see Doc Rivers resting Kawhi at that point? Sure. But I really don't think that we're going to see too many blowouts, regardless of which team, the Clippers are playing. I think the competition is going to be even more difficult than it was against the Mavericks. And I think, Kawhi is going to be the person that they continue to lean on like they have been. With that being said, we also just don't know what we're getting from Paul George. So Paul George could shut me up by having, 4 great games back to back and taking away a lot of that stress from Kawhi. So there's a lot up in the air with the Clippers in terms of, what would be required in order for the Kawhi to have some easy games. So
yeah, there's a couple other things to speak to on that. The Clippers didn't have Patrick Beverley, and that either team that you face in the Nuggets or the Jazz, the primary scoring is coming from the guard position. So that's who Pat Bev would be on. So that would be an interesting thing to see. Like I would like to see a Patrick Beverley on a Donovan Mitchell or Jamal Murray. I think he would give him a hard time. He might end up fouling out, but he would take away those easy buckets from them.
yeah,
Like you said, Paul George proved that if he can give you 20 points in a game, like that's the difference between the Clippers winning or losing by 2 points and the Clippers winning by 10 points. Like he is like that important to the team.
Yeah.
Kawhi's going to go out there and do Kawhi things. He's efficient. Skip always says the best mid-range in the game since MJ. But if Paul George can go out there and get you at least 20 and 8 and Patrick Beverley is healthy out there on the court, like I could see some blowouts happening. I think it's possible, but we just haven't seen that full force Clippers squad yet.
Yeah. And I absolutely agree. Hopefully the Clippers get, to their final form prior to meeting the Lakers. I'm not swaying from my, pick that the Lakers are going to make it to the Western Conference Finals, but I hope that the Clippers have reached their final form by the time they reach the Lakers. And I hope that because maybe they haven't had their final form yet, and because they haven't really, I also still think the underlying issue is that they haven't truly figured things out. It's some ridiculous. It's a ridiculous number. Like their starting lineup on day one has only played together for like a single digit number of games throughout the whole season, the bubble, the regular season, these playoffs. Like I think the underlying issue once you reach a 7-game series against a team like the Lakers is like, I don't think that they've fully figured themselves out, and like you can get through a team like the Mavericks resting on Kawhi's, productivity, and then just simply having, like defensive stoppers like Montrezl Harrell, the kind of, solo stars, that they have, the collection of 6 men, as I've begun to like calling them, that the Clippers have put together. You can get through a team like the Mavericks with that. You're not going to get through the Lakers with a team like that. So they better figure things out against, either the Nuggets or the Jazz before they meet the Lakers. That's all I'm going to say there. And as far as your Skip comment, Skip, if you're out there listening to this random podcast, just know that we welcome you anytime to talk about why LeBron James is the best basketball player of all time. All right? That's all I got to say on that. And with that, let's move into some hot takes.
Ow, my hand, that's hot. This one's hot too. Okay, we're trapped, everyone for himself.
Alrighty, hot takes. Wrapping up the podcast here. We've got 2 for you guys today. The first one, Colin. I know I just stated a pretty strong case that I do not believe that this is possible. But are there chances of an upset in the West? Either Lakers versus Houston, we're assuming Houston gets through the Thunder tonight, or do we see the Clippers being upset by either the Nuggets or the Jazz?
If the upset were to happen, it definitely would be the Lakers versus the Rockets. I touched on it a little bit earlier, just the Lakers' lack of perimeter defense versus how much volatility the Rockets have in like firepower from the outside. Like if the Rockets are hitting, there's literally nothing the Lakers can do about it. Like if you're getting James Harden's typical 30, 35 a game, Westbrook's 20 a game, and then all of a sudden you have someone like Eric Gordon, Ben McLemore going off for 18, like LeBron and AD would really, really have to be playing their A game to beat a team like the Rockets if they're firing on all cylinders. But that being said, I do pick the Lakers in that series, winning in 6. But there is a chance that if the Rockets are going and they're gunning, that they could upset. It's there. The possibility is there.
All right. Well, I mean, it's a good thing we disagree for a hot take, but I disagree with you. I think the Lakers kind of figured themselves out a little bit. I also think that we have yet to see LeBron's final playoff form for this year, for 2020, 2021 playoffs. Or I guess 2019, 2020 playoffs. But regardless, we have yet to see his final form for a playoff LeBron. And
who do you think is going to guard James Harden?
I think it's going to be a collection of people. I mean, I think Danny Green. I think LeBron is in really clutch moments. I think LeBron is going to stick himself on him. Whether or not that's the best thing to do, I don't know, but I think that's what he's going to do to himself. And then I mean, we have yet to see Rondo back, like really, So I don't know. I just think that they have enough bodies to throw at specifically Harden and Westbrook. That they're going to force the Rockets to kind of figure out other ways to score. I mean, I think we're going to see. With that being said, I'll call this out right now. I think we're going to see an average of like 30 points a game from either Harden or Westbrook trading off. But yeah, I mean, I don't see Houston taking them 7 games and winning 4 out of 7. I just don't see it happening. I see the Lakers figuring out a way to close things out. I think that AD is going to have some absolutely ridiculous games. I think that we can see a couple, maybe 40, 45-point games from AD. And that's going to be the difference, because the way that you asked who is going to guard James Harden, who the heck is going to keep down AD for a 7-game series on the Houston Rockets? And I just don't think there's anybody on that team that can keep him down 48 minutes a game, 7 games, and prevent him from being the difference maker.
Yeah. I mean, Davis just has to be ready to take on that role then. I don't think he's ever really showed that before, that like I'm going to be the guy that series. So, I mean, this is his chance.
Yeah, no, definitely. But yeah, I mean, so for me, I mean, I feel like I've stated my case, against the Clippers. I just don't think they have it figured out. And I mean, regardless, I mean, I think an underrated thing as well is like, regardless of what happens with this Nuggets Jazz game, is like they're going to be coming out with some passion. And I think that what the Clippers have kind of been lacking is like that like passion, like I feel like a couple of the games they lost against the Mavericks, they lost because the Mavericks just simply like wanted to win more. I don't think that there was a single game where the Mavericks were the more talented team. I honestly believe that the Mavericks just came out and simply wanted to win more than the Clippers, and that's why they won a couple of the games that they did. I think that the Nuggets and Jazz, I've said it multiple times, I'll say it again, I think the Nuggets and Jazz are a more well-rounded team than the Mavericks, and they're going to come out of this, absolutely ridiculous series wanting to win more. So I could see the Nuggets, or Jazz taking game 1, maybe game 2, and kind of forcing the Clippers to wake up a little bit. And then at that point, you're really hoping that you get the 1-up in 3 or 4 games in a row almost. So I don't know. Yeah. I think it's going to be more exciting, Clippers versus whoever else, at the end of the day. I don't know. But I've underrated the Rockets almost the entire season, and they continue to prove me wrong. So maybe that's what I'm setting myself up for again.
I think it's just like an unseen thing. Like, we've never really seen a team like that before. So it's like we automatically want to be like, they can't handle anyone big. So, but I mean, they have to prove us wrong. That's how history works. But I'm going to throw out an audible here. We had something else for this last hot takes, but I was just reading ESPN and looking at the Bucks Heat matchup. Instead of this last hot take, who do you think is going to win that series?
Bucks Heat.
Bucks Heat. Both teams are really deep. The Heat have Bam Adebayo. I'm guessing he's going to guard Giannis. It's going to be a good series.
That Giannis will I don't know. I don't want to be that that podcast or that like social group that like constantly compares players to like all-time greats, but like it's very similar to like how LeBron just like refused to lose at times. Like, I just don't see Giannis allowing his team to lose in the second round. I almost want to say that he has like another switch to flip. Like, I don't know. But then when as soon as I start to say that, like, the same can be said for Jimmy Butler. So I don't know. That's a hard question. I want to say the Bucks. I want to say the Bucks.
I could see the Heat winning. Man, they have like those like random like Duncan Robinson, like Tyler Hero, those Goran Dragic, those random dudes that like will just give you like 24 like on a whim, and it's like, what? I don't know. It's just like something about it. Like I have this weird vibe from it. Like the Heat, I don't know. I feel like the Heat might win.
That would possibly be the biggest upset in all the playoffs right now. Regardless of what happens after that, I think the Heat beating the Bucks would be the biggest upset of the playoffs because the Raptors.
And
because I mean,
the whole Giannis chapter.
Yeah, no, I mean, I said this before. If Giannis and the Bucks don't make it to the finals, I think Giannis is gone at the end of his contract. I really think that and just simply, during the offseason, we'll have plenty of time to analyze, LeBron's legacy and everything like that. But to just touch on one thing, LeBron leaving Cleveland I think, had a lot to do with him saying, I can go prove to you that I'm capable of winning. It just has to be somewhere else. And I think that Giannis is going to have a similar, career kind of arc based on him either winning this year or not winning this year. If Giannis doesn't make it to the finals, I could very easily see him going, look, I love you guys, but I have to go somewhere else to prove to myself that I can win. And that it just, it had more to do with me being in Milwaukee than me not being capable of winning. So I think a lot's riding on Milwaukee as an organization making it to the finals. And them being beaten by the Heat in the second round is not going to be a good ending to Giannis's legacy in Milwaukee.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll touch back up on this on Fridays. Yep. If I'm right, you owe me something.
All right, well, you heard it here. Listen, you guys are going to get some insight into our friendship and on the history of our friendship. But I have a history of not repaying my debts when it comes to NBA playoff bets with my buddy Colin. All right. So I'm staking it on the podcast here. I think there's no way that the Bucks get knocked out by the Heat. Colin, are you willing to stake a bet on the Heat getting past the Bucks?
Yep.
All right.
Coffee? Okay. If the Bucks beat the Heat, I will buy you coffee.
All right. You guys heard it here. So we're betting a coffee on the Heat Bucks series. Maybe we'll make that into a special YouTube video. Whatever the outcome is, we'll make a special YouTube video of either one of us repaying our debt. So, but with that, that is going to do it for us today. We went a little bit longer than we wanted to. We're trying to figure out a little bit of an outline. We're trying to figure out kind of a timeline that we want the podcast to go. I think the both of us are kind of liking the 30 to 35 minute range of the podcast. So, but yeah, this is, man. You bamboozled me with that question. Now I'm worried that maybe the Bucks won't do it. Whenever you ask these things, it's like your OKC prediction. Like it just makes me rethink everything that I thought I knew. So, but thank you guys for listening. We like Colin said, we will see you again on Friday. Please make sure follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to the YouTube channel, share the podcast with all your friends. NBA's back. Playoffs aren't going anywhere.
NBA's back.